The Israeli army is conducting one of the largest operations in the northern part of the occupied West Bank in years. At least 3 people have been killed, including one in an Israeli airstrike that targeted the Nur Shams refugee camp in Tulkarem. Elsewhere in that city, Israeli bulldozers have been ripping up the pavement. Armoured vehicles have also been entering the cities of Tubas and Jenin. There are reports of vehicles being targeted by explosives. Palestinian fighters are confronting the soldiers. Nida Ibrahim reports from Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank.
Since midnight, the Israeli forces have raided 3 areas simultaneously. We are talking about Jenin, Tulkarem, and the Jordan Valley. They've been reporting that they faced some armed confrontations with Palestinian fighters that they have been already working against and intensifying their raids in the occupied West Bank. You know, we always talk about raids in the occupied West Bank, but since the war started, the numbers of these raids have more than tripled. We're talking about 30 to 40 Israeli raids on average. But in the past few weeks, we've seen an intensification in the use of aerial strikes against Palestinian fighters, and the Israeli forces have been saying that they are combating the use of IEDs, which are the improvised explosive devices often used by Palestinian fighters against the Israeli forces. And now we are seeing that the Israeli forces are talking about the largest operation in the north of the occupied West Bank since the year 2002, which is when the second armed intifada broke out, and the Israeli forces have launched a large military operation that included invading many cities around the occupied West Bank. Ultimately, we are talking about a situation where the Palestinians feel that they are under the threat of the Israeli forces, but also they've been under fire by the Israeli settlers who have been rampaging and attacking Palestinian cities and towns and making Palestinians' lives more and more difficult.
Omar Baddar is a Middle East political analyst. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to the programme. Basically, what do you make of this military operation?
Yeah, I think the context of it is worth noting, which is the fact that Israel has been intending to annex and ethnically cleanse huge parts of the West Bank for a very, very long time. And in fact, has been actively doing that in slow motion. And I think that they saw an opportunity, given that the world is distracted by the horror that Israel is unleashing on Gaza, to kind of escalate in the West Bank. And so what we've seen over the past several months is more than 650 Palestinians being killed by Israeli soldiers and settlers throughout the West Bank. In any other context, this would be a crisis that everybody would be talking about, but only in the shadow of the genocide that Israel is unleashing on Gaza has this kind of passed without people really paying attention. And naturally, whenever you see this kind of violence unfold, there's going to be resistance to it, and in some cases, violent resistance as well. And now Israel sees itself as somehow compelled to launch this military operation, seemingly under this delusion that has been disproven over and over again, that you can somehow kill and torture and maim and imprison and suppress and oppress Palestinians into some kind of victory out of all this. But this is really the same tape being played over and over again. And it's a recipe that will lead to endless violence and bloodshed until there is a fundamental change in Israel's attitude towards Palestinians.
And what about the timing of this particular raid? I mean, should we be reading anything into that?
I think Israel is under tremendous pressure of the fact that they are stuck in Gaza without a strategic victory. They promised that they would be able to defeat Hamas quickly, that they would be able to free the hostages. They've been able to achieve neither of these things. In the north, they're stuck in a status quo where they're supposed to restore their deterrence and intimidate Hezbollah across the Lebanon border. They have failed miserably at that. And I think whenever Israel finds itself cornered and is in desperate need for a victory for its public, all they know how to do is unleash indiscriminate violence against Palestinians. And this is the playbook that they actually go to. And I think that this is the moment that we find ourselves in, is that Netanyahu is desperate for some sort of image of an accomplishment. And he thinks by launching this massive, large-scale operation in the West Bank, in which, relatively speaking, given the dynamics under occupation, Israel can claim some sort of victory at the end of this, that this is somehow going to play well for Netanyahu politically and try to salvage an image that has been completely tarnished over the past 10 months.
What do you think then is Israel's overriding strategy in the occupied West Bank? Has it changed or accelerated?
Yeah, it's simply an acceleration. I think that's absolutely correct. What they have been doing for a very, very long time is trying to squeeze Palestinians into smaller and smaller areas, squeezing them into a handful of major cities, and effectively trying to take over the remainder of it. And they have long ago killed the prospect of a Palestinian state. That is no longer something that is on the table. And what they're doing is they're consolidating their power in a way that, when you look at the extremism that we're now witnessing from the Israeli government and the rhetoric coming out of it, I think they're interested in a second Nakba, in a second catastrophe and a massive ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And that is what they're trying to lay the groundwork for. Obviously, the world is very different. Israel's PR image has taken a very significant hit because of the unspeakable violence they've been unleashing and the racist invective that has accompanied it. But until now, there have not been meaningful consequences from the world. It's only been condemnations and criticism. And unfortunately, Israel has seen that they can get away with this. They don't know for how much longer. And I think that they're accelerating it to try to get as much land as possible while the world will put up with this government without imposing any meaningful consequences. And I think that the recipe for changing that would be ending all military funding for Israel, all diplomatic relations with Israel, until it recognizes Palestinian humanity and starts dealing with Palestinians as equal human beings who are deserving of the same dignity and respect and human rights that Israelis enjoy. Equality is the only way out of the mess that we currently find ourselves in.
Omar Baddar, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.